All right, I think we are live. So here is the deal. Tonight we're going to be talking about lead generation. I don't want to kind of slow roll this. Yesterday we covered a whole different topic that is a limiting factor in your business. The replay, if you're watching this on our website on weballey.net, you'll be able to catch that replay in one of the linked videos right below this. But tonight we're going to specifically talk about lead gen and why. Well, we'll talk more about why it's a limiting factor in your business, but it's almost kind of obvious and self-evident. But one of the reasons it is so kind of near and dear to my heart, the only reason that I'm actually online right now and speaking to anybody in some capacity was that I had a construction company, a local home improvement company here in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were not getting a lot of phone calls. I was kind of plugged into one system of lead generation, and that was utility companies who were running a program that offered rebates to homeowners that would let homeowners get a significant rebate for having someone like me, who is like an energy auditor as well as general contractor, to go out and kind of assess their home. I was kind of like a home inspector, but specifically for energy use in the home. So I'd climb around in attics and look at their windows and see how old their water heater was, and a bunch of different things along those lines. Put a big fan in their door and depressurize the house and see how leaky it was. Do the same thing with their duct work. That was kind of the nature of what I was doing. So I go out and do one of these energy audits, of which I collected $100 to do. It took me about 3 hours. But then I also then got kicked another $200 from the utility company for performing that. So I was making about $150 an hour, which isn't bad, right? But then because I was also a general contractor, whatever we found that we could uncover and do for the homeowner, well, then there were rebates in place to repair ducts, to improve the insulation value, to put solar panels on houses, and all that kind of thing, right? And that was all well and good until they ended the program. So I was getting 2, 3, 4 phone calls a week. I was closing all of those. I say closing them, meaning that when someone talked to me, they were all setting up an appointment to get that initial energy audit done. Out of those energy audits, about half of them chose to do some of the work that was necessary to get their house more efficient. They could save money. I had I say really good product. It was a product that was good enough that it was selling well. And on each and all of those construction jobs, I would make anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 or $4,000 profit. So in a decent week, I could bring home $10,000, right? When I was getting calls. When that program changed, I had a website up that was getting no traffic. Nobody was finding it. I had no other channels that were bringing revenue into my business, and literally went from that to barely squeaking by on some of the referrals that I got from actually the people I'd worked with in the past. Right. So over time, that just kind of, I limped along and limped along and limped along, but got into a project, and I'll just say that the homeowner and I didn't agree on the terms of the conditions of the agreement that we came to, and wound up upside down on it quite a bit. I wound up losing about $11,000 on that product, on that job, and that pretty much wiped out the entirety of the savings that I had in place, and wound up, as embarrassing as this sounds, getting my water turned off because we were 3 months late on those bills, and that took a little bit of time. But that's really the nature of why I wound up on a webinar, kind of like what you're seeing here today, was that I was trying to figure out a way to get to essentially kind of open up a new channel of getting new calls and customers into my business interested in what I could do to help them with, right? Because just because the utility company changed that program, it didn't mean that there weren't a lot of homeowners out there who needed this stuff. They were already kind of aware of it. The utility company actually had done a lot to promote through mail campaigns and radio campaigns and billboards and all that type of thing. Lost Glenn there for a second. Um, but that was kind of the nature of how I wound up online looking for information about how to get more traffic and customers into my business. Right. So I came across a company that was offering training to do search engine optimization. There was a guy that I became, I guess, fond of, right, in just a really platonic sense, but he was really sharing a ton of value. Greg Morrison's his name. I don't mean to be obscure about any of that. And they just launched a program where his training was kind of front and center on how to rank websites and web pages in Google for whatever search terms you're trying to do, right? And so there are a lot of the people who were in online marketing at that time who were online marketers. And so they were looking at it as a service that they could offer to other businesses and all that kind of thing. I was not interested in that at all. What I needed to do was turn leads on to my company, my actual brick and mortar construction home improvement company. I say brick and mortar. Well, my house is made out of brick, so that's, I guess, is brick, and there's mortar between the bricks, so I'm brick and mortar. But I didn't have a storefront or anything like that. So I jumped in the training. I actually took action. I built websites. I understood about search phrases and keywords and what to do to create the signals that were necessary to get search engines to recognize the properties that I'd built as valuable and that were clearly communicating value to a customer who was looking for information and answers to their questions. So the first 45 days, within that first 45 days, I consumed all the content. I actually went out and I built 60 websites in a month and a half by hand, right? I had to figure out how to use Web Host Manager and cPanel and WordPress and figure out plugins and all these things that I did. They were not even in my vocabulary before I got into that. But what I did was take fairly massive action based on someone who had shown me something that I put enough pieces together to realize that if I was ranking number one for insulation company in Phoenix, that was going to generate some phone calls. And so I set about doing things like that: insulation, solar shade screens, solar panels, all of that kind of thing. And so then within, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months, I went from getting, 3-4 calls a month into we had 3 or more jobs booked every day, actual jobs, like projects that were $5,000 to $7,000. So I got to a place where I was able to collect as profit running those projects. It was busy. Like I was busy. I was running around, putting miles on my truck and all that kind of thing. I was in the field, 12 hours a day. And then I was at night learning more, building more websites and all that kind of thing. But, I was making a couple $1,000s a day. So that was really cool. There was kind of a moment where I realized, like, okay, I'm either going to have to hire somebody else in the field or figure out a different way to monetize what I knew how to do, right? I had this building block now, which was understanding how to get in front of traffic on the internet and get them to actually call, right? So you can call that lead generation. It's traffic plus conversion. I like to think of it as relationship plus decision, but you can call it what you want. I think there's reasons to understand both of those as far as language goes and concepts go. But at that point, when I had different phone numbers on every website. They all came to my personal cell phone. So you can imagine what ranking 60 websites for home improvement in a metro area. My phone was blowing up, literally. I'd be on a call with a customer and would have 1 or 2 other customers calling me and leaving messages on my personal cell phone while I was getting an appointment set up with the first customer. Got pretty hectic. In a good way, right? It was kind of the opposite, but it was still kind of like this weird stress. So, from there, I started talking to some of my subs. I knew they could do good work even without me being in place. So, I talked to one of the insulation guys was the first. I talked to a solar guy and an insulation guy, and they were kind of my first customers as a digital marketer. They agreed to pay me for leads. Right? They knew the nature of the leads. I had all the calls recorded. There was a whisper on the phone. I talked about this in some of the other webinars, so it's a little bit of a recap. But what that let me do was then instead of making a couple $1,000s on each job, I was making like 45, 35 $75 per call. And so at that point, now I just got to turn up the juice on getting more and more of those phone calls in place and getting those relationships established with people who could provide those services that would then pay me for those phone calls. And so, during this time, I kept a couple of those sites in my inventory, so to speak. I owned them all. That was kind of neat too. Owned assets. We're going to talk about owned assets and why I really like um, what you can do with that. And that does come down. It's definitely part of lead generation. But during that time, there was an article that came out and it got syndicated and it ran in USA Today and the New York Times and, all the major papers. And it was on a lot of different Huffington Posts website. So it got a ton of traffic. And what it was about was that there was a change coming up with the tax credits for solar in that was nationwide, right? There was a federal tax credit in place and they voted and the legislation was going to change so that if you didn't get this stuff under contract this year, you were effectively going to have to pay another. There was like 8% that was going away, and on a $25,000 job, it's not insignificant. But the day after that ran, and I didn't realize where I was, right? I didn't realize that I actually had a website that was ranking nationally for solar tax credits. It was ranking number 2 nationally for solar tax credits, and it was the only website on page 1 that was not a news agency. I had a form on there that I had a relationship. Again, I was doing what's called CPA, which is cost per acquisition, right? I got paid per someone filling out a form instead of a phone call. But that was the first day I made $10,000 online in a day because of that. And the next day I made like another 6 or 7. And, it continued for about a week or so. But I was like, oh, there's a lot more that can be done here when you understand ranking and getting in front of people who are looking for things and getting them to take action, make a decision, make a click, whatever it might be. So that's how I wound up here. That was kind of the first few dominoes that fell that got me where I am as far as what I do online. And I had a lot of things that I'd done offline and sales and construction and mechanic work and different things like that. But online, I went from like literally getting no phone calls from any asset I had online to within a year having a $10,000 day explicitly from a website that I'd ranked that had a form on it that people filled out, and I got paid for that. So I kind of took lead generation on as like almost like my business model. And so I continued to scale that. I understand phone tracking systems better. And, I kept it really simple. There's a lot of people who have a lot more involved lead generation business models, but I didn't. I wasn't worried. I wasn't doing anything with the map pack. I wasn't doing anything with emails and continuing to follow up with people to see if I could get someone else's call or, business later down the road. It was really just about that first impression and then an action that they took on that page. So today we're going to talk about that concept, but really take it apart and pull it apart more so you can understand like what the little story I just told about my experience. My construction business was limited because I did not have leads coming in. It went from, I don't know, we were, you know, gross, we were probably doing $5,000 a month, right? And after I paid my costs and everything else, I was not making much money. Obviously, I couldn't pay my water bill. To being able to put $10,000 of profit in my pocket in a day from doing lead generation and focusing on that and opening up that limiting factor, that bottleneck, that obstacle that, in one way I thought I had it figured out because I was on the program with the utility company. But as soon as that changed, everything dried up. So we're going to talk about that more today. Glenn's got a lot to share as well with the way he builds websites and looks at things. And then we're also going to look at this from the angle of being an agency owner and what you can do. And I'm going to, chime back in and talk about when I built Search Explosion, which is my main agency website. really as a test case and just kind of like an example website that I could help people understand what I was doing on site and on page to get the ranking that I did. And it turned into a really big windfall for me as well. But Glenn, my partner, my friend, who's on with me today, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing pretty damn good. How are you?
Excited. It's my daughter's birthday today, so that was fun. Got to eat a little cake, got some lasagna. She requested lasagna as the birthday meal for this year, number 6. And I typically am not a huge fan of pasta, like, just in general, but lasagna kind of, it worked. My wife, so yeah, she put that together really well. So I'm
Yeah.
happy. I'm full. I was a little sleepy, so I took a walk around the block, but now I'm ready to rock. So
Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks. Yeah, my background, as some of you may know, I came from the marketing and advertising sales aspect of things. So I worked for one of those big old phone books selling marketing and advertising. So through that and through different endeavors and stuff like that, I guess you would say over the last decade, I look at lead generation or prospecting, whatever you want to call it, kind of the same way I talk to business owners about revenue streams. And I think it's just for each one of us trying to figure out what are we trying to do, what's our goals, and then how are we going to accomplish those goals. Because yes, optimizing something online, I look at that as direct advertising. It's basically Google is what the phone book was 20 years ago. People need a service, they go to Google, they look for it, they try and contact a couple of people. That's your direct advertising when they're in there doing it. But there's also a lot of indirect advertising you can add to it depending on what you're trying to do and how much business you're trying to bring on. So whether it be advertising on social media platforms, whether it be different types of email marketing, direct marketing. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get out in front of people, to prospect, to have people raise their hand, to initiate that relationship, to have a presentation, to go out and find different ways to bring clients on. I think the one thing that's the most important with any of these is what I call knowing your numbers. If you're optimized for a search phrase ABC, and if it has X amount of search volume, well, you're going to have Y amount people land on your website for Z amount to contact you to end up with A amount of clients.
we're getting into
And
algebra now. Come on now.
yeah, you never know what we may come up with.
Yeah, I like it.
And it's just with all of these, they have different numbers, different conversion rates, and stuff like that. So if you don't really know your numbers, know what your conversion rates, a lot of times we're just kind of about spinning our wheels, thinking we're working hard, and we may not be working as smart as we should be.
Yeah, that like there's so much stuff to unpack tonight. We're gonna try to keep this hour and a half maybe, but we've got a ton to share with you in regards to how these different things work, and what Glenn was really talking about, like knowing your numbers and ranking for a specific search phrase. One of the reasons that I began really trying to define or understand properly what the term SEO, right, search engine optimization, what it represented. And one of the reasons that I don't try to use that term as much is that there are things called algorithms, and those algorithms change. And people who are on the bleeding edge of an algorithm, when that algorithm changes, you can still have a lot of stuff online. And if you shift from being number 1 to page 2 for all of your search phrases because you are so heavily optimized and cutting edge on those things, you can lose all your entire revenue as well. And so I really like to look at it more along the lines of search engine influence building. And hopefully that kind of conveys some information about the way I build websites and web properties right now, which not it doesn't ignore SEO. It is certainly the essence of what we're trying to do on each and every page. But what I was doing when I started, which was building an EMD, which is an exact match domain, and really trying to rank it for one keyword that I knew had search volume and I could convert with. What I do now is build things that are more like parcel match domains that have a keyword in the domain name. And then they've got a lot of different pages that rank for a lot of different variations that are supporting content, as well as search phrases in and of themselves that will get traffic and help people land on my stuff because, um, I've experienced a couple of well, when Panda first came out, that I was doing online marketing. When Penguin first came out, if you don't know what these are, don't worry about it. But what that let me realize, there were so many people who were hammered when that happened, right? Meaning they went from 10,000 uniques on a site that was generating, $5,000 a month for them to 100 impressions, and really the revenue dried up almost completely. So you can be in this game and be doing most of the things right, but if you aren't understanding more properly that you've got to have some ability to weather the storm and some flexibility in your machine, so to speak, so that things, when it gets pressured, don't break. They kind of bend and sway. You might actually wind up better off because like other people who might be right there with you did break. Um, I'd like to kind of explore that and open it up, and then also then what that led to was, okay, SEO is awesome. I love it. It's the primary driver of leads that I have in my business. But there are a lot of other ways to have leads as well. Obviously, advertising and digital marketing in general, there's a lot of things going on. So, I started fleshing out my chops, my understanding, my ability to implement paid ads, right? Pay per click, because that doesn't really change that much. The dollars might go up and down a little bit, but you can still keep, the faucet on, so to speak. Well, literally in my case, right? Um, and so, Glenn, maybe you can kind of talk about and explore a little bit more, because you did come out of a different. It's the same model but a different platform, right? You're talking about print ads, right? The
Mhm.
phone book, and how that was, and what that transition looked like for you, because there were people who were spending money in the phone book who also were doing things online and making money on both. You probably came into this a little more like, oh, there's a bunch of different ways I can get traffic. SEO really is a great way because the margins tend to be high, and everybody really wins. But there's a bunch of different ways to make that work.
There are. And the one thing I'll say for anyone that's watching this now or on a replay is, from working in advertising for the last 20 years. Yeah, I started when I was 7, as you can tell. But it's always easier to help someone move an advertising budget from one medium to another than to teach somebody how to spend money that's not used to spending money. So even talking about these phone books, I just had one dropped off at my door last Friday. And it was joking about throwing it away. And I said, no, we're not throwing that away. There are people in there spending money that probably need some help. So when they still come around, they aren't near as large as they used to be, but you can use that as a lead source. There are online
About that, like talk about it, like exactly what you would do, right? Because I'm kind of trying to read between the lines, and I know you well enough to know some of the things that we've shared on other webinars, right? But for people who are catching, some of this the first time, that phone book is what, right? As far as being an opportunity to find people who are already spending money, right?
Yeah, it's leads. So I mean, you can go through that, take a look at someone that's spending money, and I can give you estimates of what they're paying for a full page, a half page, a quarter page, whatever down the line, and then going and looking and seeing what they're doing online. Are they working with someone that knows what they're doing? Are there inefficiencies there that we can contact them, call them out, find somebody to get in front of the decision maker, and look at it. I mean, every time a phone book comes around, you probably have 1, 2, 3, 400 prospects that are spending money that you can start trying to reach out to them, whether it be through phone calls, through emails, through sending videos about what the issues they're having. There are a multitude of ways that you can reach out and start contacting these business owners. But if you're reaching out to some that are spending money, especially in a dying product, a dying industry, and give them a better solution, it's going to be easier to have a better client acquisition ratio and be bringing on more people. And all you're doing is reallocating their dollars from product A to product B. And if you do this and do it well, you're going to have clients for years. I mean, I have people that we've been working with through my previous employer and now through my company for 15, 20 years now, and they're not going anywhere. We help take care of everything they need. We're their sole resource for whatever it needs to be for advertising and marketing. Shoot, when I worked for one phone book, I took care of their ads in the other phone books. The sales reps would call me and I would take care of managing their ads for them. So, I mean, that's just one way. I mean, we have online directories. We have these. We can always take a look at Google for page 2, page 3, page 4. So if you have systems, if you have processes in place, and you can, as we kind of talked a little bit about yesterday, when you can start managing and teaching these things, now all of a sudden it's just not your time you're trading for dollars. You can start trading other people's time for dollars. And it really makes it easy to do this scale thing that we talk about or grow your business. And finding people that are spending money on advertising isn't hard. It's just finding a way to get in front of the decision maker, being able to articulate a conversation, be able to give them a good needs based proposal, show them some return on their investment, and be able to talk a little bit and create a relationship.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like those things specifically. That's actually those are two of the main topics we're going to cover on the next two webinars. We've got one Friday as well as Sunday. We're talking directly about sales, and on Sunday we're going to be talking about onboarding, right? As kind of like a way bigger limiting factor than you probably realize right now. Unless you've really tackled that and understood it properly, it is affecting how efficient and effective you are going to be with any of the other stuff in your business. So, as Glenn alluded to, you got to, it's not hard to go find a phone book. They get dropped off at your house for free. You can go buy leads if you want, but what are those leads? Where'd they come from? You know, it some of these vendors may have a phone book and an outsourcer who looks through the phone book and collects information on people who have ads, who put a bold listing, who have a quarter page or a full page or whatever it might be. Those are all people spending money. I tend not, I live in a city. I don't drive around much, but when I do, I listen to the radio and I got a little notebook or I do a speech to text on my phone. Every radio ad that comes on, that's somebody spending money on advertising. Every billboard I see, that's somebody spending money on advertising. And they give you their friggin' phone number, right? And it's usually a phone number that's going to connect you to somebody that's maybe not the decision maker. You're going to have to do some more work. We're going to talk about more of that in the sales and the onboarding pieces, and really subsequently in a lot of the other training that we've got. But you don't, like, I love SEO, and I'm not trying to say that that's not a great way to get new leads in your business. When I built Search Explosion, I really didn't, you do search volume and you try to understand how many people are looking for it. But when you're looking at like SEO terms, a lot of that the volume that's in that comes from people like us that are checking their rankings every day, right? So the numbers are probably a little more inflated than they would be in other industries. But ranking number one in maps and organic and having a video that's ranked number one for your search phrases, it can keep you doing really, really well if you've got these other limiting factors addressed. With my agency, like I said, I call it an agency, but really it was an example website that I put together to show that I could rank, and then helped people see exactly what I'd done to that website and to my Google My Business, and with citations and with links and things like that, just to be really more over the shoulder and help people really see, pull back the curtain, so to speak, help them actually see what was going on. Well, I was getting calls every day, like every single day. I get a call from a client, or I get a call from somebody that watched a webinar where I was demonstrating what I was doing, who was like, your program looks great, but I don't want to do this. Will you just, can you help me with my project, my program, um, my business, my offer? And so, we've talked also on some other webinars about getting yourself out there and doing things that will help you be in front of people who are, potentially looking for your service, because with search engines, they're already looking for your service. But when you use some of these other kind of prospecting methods, paid ads, type in your search phrase, make note of the first 3 paid ads that come up. Those are websites spending money on your search phrase. Go to LinkedIn, there's paid ads. Go to Twitter, there's paid ads. Instagram, Facebook, all these social media platforms have people that are spending money actively on paid ads. The actual print media, right? We get all sorts of weird junk mail, Central Phoenix Today or whatever it might be. Most of it are advertisements, right? And there's some content pieces, and those are advertisements too, right? Pick up a magazine. A lot of big, nice, shiny, glossy ads, meaning people are spending money. And some of these are bigger companies, but as Glenn alluded to, if there's a company already put together that understands spending money to make more money, it's going to be easier for them to carve out and allocate some of those resources that they're already spending, part of that budget, to something that you can really demonstrate is going to give them a bigger ROI, is going to be more stable, is going to be more scalable, and gives them almost an unlimited upside potential with really winning online with organic stuff.
Well, and I think, again, there are so many ways we can go about things. Yeah, your website, and this is the same thing I tell business owners when I'm talking to them. This is your first resume. This is telling people what you do, how you can help them, and how you can do that. After your website's done, you better make sure this LinkedIn's done, because people are looking there, again, as your resume, your online portfolio, and stuff like that. And then from there, I mean, you can be using any of these lead sources. You can use Yelp for people that are spending money on Yelp. You can use online phone directories, all these different places like that to find different people that are spending money. For people that like to work in a certain niche, I have a place that I can get 10,000 leads in any niche I want for $1,000, so 10 cents a piece. So let's say you have 10,000 leads and you want to go after dentists, HVACs, plumbers, whatever you want. Well, now you have 10,000 people you can email to. You can take those emails and throw them into Facebook or LinkedIn, create custom audiences. Let's say 30 to 50% of them are showing up and using the same email for those profiles. Now you're running ads to those people, so they're sending out emails to them. Every time they go to Facebook, they're seeing your ad. They see your website. You start remarketing or retargeting them. You can be a one-man gang, and it looks like you're the biggest show in town. They don't know where you're at, but it's that perception that is using multiple forms of contact, and all of a sudden you look like the only person around that does web design, SEO, pay-per-click, Facebook ads, whatever you're trying to promote. It's just working a little bit smarter and using the tools around you to help make people raise their hand, or fill out a form, make a phone call, and start the process.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned like web design. That's kind of one of the essences, like kind of one of the core things that I'm actually doing right now is, when you take on a new SEO client, one of the most efficient things you can do and most effective and quickest ways to help them improve their ranking is to go in and fiddle around with their website, right? Get those on-page factors correct, maybe build some new content that supports the content they've already got. Those are going to move the needle for a website from a like kind of standard SEO approach most quickly, right? And what's nice about that is when you understand that you can do that, if you do that yourself, it's cheap. If you do that well, you can take that and put it in training and get a VA to do it for you or someone else to do it for you. Now you're not having to spend the hours on it. One of the things I talked about last webinar, I did this as an outsourcer, right, for $11 an hour on a bunch of people's websites, a lot of pages. But what I was doing during that whole time was honing my understanding and ability to get in quickly into WordPress, address those factors, get them put together the right way, get the titles right, get the page titles, the headings, all the other factors that come into play. Tonight's webinar is not specifically about SEO, but it is in one way. But I'm not sitting here trying to teach people and train people what to do on websites. But you get to a certain point and you realize, like, wait a second, like this client just paid a designer $10,000 for this website, and it's not ever going to get any traffic unless the business owner pays to get traffic to it. And that's really then what SEO is about, right? So they got a designer to put a website together that made everybody feel warm and fuzzy. And then the business owner then has to take a further step to actually get traffic to it. Like, what if I could kind of kill two birds with one stone and build someone's website that was designed in such a way where it was going to get traffic? It's like, oh, well, I could build a website for, I kind of knew my costs, and there's certain benefits to being able to do that where you control it. You don't have to replace someone else that says that they are doing something or have done something the right way and it's not the right way. So really then kind of shifting that, I won't say shifting that focus, but opening up that other channel, so to speak, of more search phrases to be able to rank for web design. Get in more at the ground floor. with a new website. So you can actually build it properly. So then leads become that, well, then you get into other things. Well, okay, so public record, every person that starts a new business, that's public record. You can get that information, right? So these are all people who just started a new business. Do they have a website yet? No, maybe not. Like in all likelihood, no, it's not probably built or built properly yet. That's another source for you to go in and start to. So, like we're talking about lead generation, like there are endless amounts of ways to start to do this prospecting. But then from that, what do we do to develop a relationship where they can make a decision, right? And then that's we're going to talk more about that in the sales webinar and the onboarding webinar, because if you don't have the sales and specifically that onboarding component, you're not necessarily going to know what to do at the lead generation point to talk about, right? Because you're not going to understand how your process is going to get implemented, what your product really is, what your services really are. So Glenn, I don't know if that triggered anything that you would have to say about those kind of concepts, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think each way along the process, whether it be prospecting, knowing your numbers, getting things together, whether when it comes to sales, having that process put together so that you can follow a path that is tried and true and proven. As soon as you get someone to say yes, what do you do for that? I mean, we've talked about it before. I love it when someone says yes. As soon as they say yes, within 15 minutes, they have a contract in their email. They have a welcome aboard email. I have to do one more call for an hour just to get content. So literally, when someone says yes, everything goes out to them. They sign everything. They fill out their stuff. I forward an email. I do an interview for content, and I'm done. The work's done. Then I talk to them afterwards to say how it is. So yeah, coming from, I think maybe having a little bit of a military background and then working for a very large advertising company, you understand why there's processes along the road so that things don't slip through the cracks. And the better you refine those processes, the better you are at training people to manage those processes for you. Your life gets kind of easier the bigger you go.
Yeah. And so then what that does is it sets you up to succeed, right? It's like step one, win, step two, attack.
Mm-hmm.
Something I took directly from David Mills, Mike Long. But when you've got these limiting factors addressed properly, attacking is easy. Like I say easy, like it's psychologically easy. There's no internal conflict because it's not like I used to get a yes on some of these crazy projects that I landed in the middle of. And it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's worth the money, but man, this is going to take a lot of time and effort on my part to figure out even how to start addressing these issues. Right? I took SEO jobs with. There was one company that I had within I guess maybe 2015 or so that had a custom built CMS, content management system, that really wasn't put together in a way that search engines are going to recognize what the content on each and every one of those pages was about. And it was a lot. It was 60 million URLs across 1,300 domains. Like it was, going from an insulation contractor website in Gilbert, Arizona. This is a very different beast. And so that yes was awesome because I got the check and it was revenue, and I could keep things going and I was going to make money with it, and it really forced me to learn. But after that, what I felt was I was more resistant to take on those big projects again because the systems I didn't have those systems in place. I didn't have other people trained well enough where, oh, I just want more of those. I want more of those $30,000 checks to start, right? And then ongoing monthly fees that were more than 5 figures. Like that was the nature of that deal. And so then psychologically, if you don't have these limiting factors addressed, I call them limiting factors, not just because they're inherently limiting because of, well, if you don't have phone calls, you can't turn that into revenue. They're limiting psychologically speaking because you're not in a position to win. You haven't already won, and now you're playing the game out. So really what this is about is setting your business up to win. And when you get these things in place and implemented, it becomes much less of a struggle to get yourself to do the things that are going to move the needle, right? And to take the action necessary to talk to new customers, to do whatever it might be to prospect and generate more leads, because then, well, with the sales and onboarding, really what I'm doing is figuring out whether or not we're a good fit, getting them to, kind of come to these agreements and commitments with our business. And then, okay, cool, deal's done. This gets sent, contract signed, paid, onboarding, and then that's it. I say that's it, meaning there's going to be some monthly, whatever, if you got to talk to the client about the results on a monthly basis or whatever. But that's also then a process that you can put in place that somebody else can really take care of well for you. That's one of the things that I do have in place with Search Explosion. I got a great partner, and he handles all the monthly stuff, right? He's been handling a lot of the sales stuff, but we're getting ready to kind of jump back in there, revamp all of it to take stuff off of his plate so he can more appropriately allocate his time as well. And so anyway, like if you're not yet winning at a big level, like when I do the little walk around videos or whatever, if you've seen those, this isn't really about working harder. And you can say work smarter, and I really do like that. But then what it indicates is like you're working dumb. And it's not that we're dumb. It's just that we're not paying attention to the important stuff. And that really is the essence of getting your business set up and your life set up to win. And again, I quote David Mills quite a bit. The first time I heard him speak, one of the first things he said was, "I'm here to win." And what winning is not like I'm just going to put my head down and work really hard and persevere no matter what. Perseverance is going to come into it, but it's perseverance about getting all of the things in place in your business so that you are a winning business. And then things flow, right? You're in flow state. You're doing the things that are natural to you, talking to people, I get their card, I give them my card. This is the follow-up. This is the messaging. Somebody else is looking at their business and they're like another thing that I know I'm a little bit all over the board, but I kind of want to just spit a lot of these things at people because there's so much that we can share. Like if you do a look for their brand name and they don't have a knowledge graph and they're not covering first page with their actual business entity, that's somebody who needs SEO. Even if they're ranking well for their product, their entity online is not put together the right way, right? Somebody who needs SEO. So, okay, we did that search. That's not what happened. I know a template for a format of a video that I shoot to help them see that. And there's going to be a lot of people who realize like, oh, well, no, I do want to look more professional online. What can you do? What do you need to do to get this going? Right.
Well,
Almost then the question comes back. Go ahead, Glenn. Yeah.
Well, and I think the one thing that I see from marketers around the country that we've helped with over the years is they get a little bit overwhelmed because there are different aspects, different things need to go into this. And sometimes it's kind of hard to do things that are outside of your personal characteristics, your personal traits and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of identifying, like you were talking about with your partner with Search Explosion, is finding out what do I do well so I can do this and do this over and over and over again. What do you do well? So, and if those things are not the same, that's awesome. That's a great partnership. That's a great collaboration so that we can work things together. I mean, we have our third partner that likes to stand back here and do stupid, amazing things with code that makes my head want to explode, but he doesn't want to go out and sell. So that's okay. I know from my aspect, I enjoy conquest. So if I don't have 4 or 5 or 10 appointments a week with prospective clients that I can sell a few of those, I start getting frustrated, down, and stuff like this because I enjoy being able to find a solution for people. I enjoy being able to help them grow their businesses and things like that. So it's a little bit finding out what do I do well? And then from the time you figure out what you do well, okay, what do I need to put in place then so that I can go out and win? Because, I mean, winning is fun. I mean, I think there's a reason why they keep score at an athletic event. That's to know who won. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter. So, yeah, I think part of it is looking at each of us individually. What do I really do well? What do I want to do? And then how can I put different systems or processes or relationships in place so that I can win on a regular basis? I think once we identify that, it's a lot easier Because I know from my aspect, yeah, I was chief cook and bottle wash for years. I did everything. Did I do when I did everything? Was I doing anything well? No, I was doing okay and enough to get by and enough to succeed. But when I get back in my proper lane, then I can really excel. And when I can get somebody that can do the other stuff, then that's their lane. Now watch out. Now we're going to come after people, and there's not really anything that can hold us back other than ourselves.
Yeah, so this is something everyone is in the middle of, right? We're all naturally good at some things, but if you're a business owner or well, it doesn't matter if you're a business owner or not. You have to be somewhat aware of and responsible for kind of those, those three things that I talk about all the time, right? Traffic, conversion, product delivery. Um, you may be great at product delivery, but if you own a business, you've got to figure out a way to get stuff done so that you also have traffic and conversion, or else your greatness is not really going to really shine, right? So you have to find a way to get these things handled, and you might not be great at it. I'm not particularly great at doing, like I like tech, like figuring it out once. Like I built a little mini computer that plays Nintendo games. Like I kind of like doing it once, and then it's like, well, I don't code. But here's a kind of crazy thing, right? So I don't code, I don't write code. I know a little bit of the syntax for HTML and a little bit with PHP, but I built and sold two software companies, and I did not write one line of code for either of those. But things got done, right? I had partners and I had contractors in place that could write the code. I understood the necessary, like the needs analysis, so to speak, right? If you're going through sales, I was able to get that, convey that. Then I was kind of a go-between. Like there's a, a funny scene in a movie called Office Space. I don't know if you've seen it, Glenn, or anybody watching. And the consultants come in, right, and they're talking to people about their jobs, and one of the guys, like quite literally, says, well, I I take things from the customers and give them to the your engineering team or whatever it might be. It's like, okay, so like you physically like walk paper down the hall and hand it to them? And he's like, no, well, not most of the time. They actually get sent through the computer, but and then he kind of just keeps backpedaling a little bit more and more. And he's like, F it, I'm a people person. Don't you guys understand? And I mean, that points to, in a kind of funny way, Mike Judge is, I think, the person who did that, who I'm a kind of a big fan of. Um, what it points to is that sometimes people really don't understand what in the world they're doing with a business. You think an entrepreneur is just somebody who takes risks, and maybe they're an independently employed like trade, and that's really kind of been the way I've operated through much of my life. I was just independently employed doing a trade. Building a business is about something very, very different. And so what we're trying to help people see is that understanding those elements and getting those things in place is really important.
Well, I think the reason I'm doing this is because when Office Space came out, I think I had a job, and the efficiency experts were both named Bob, if you remember. And they asked the one guy, "It looks like you've been missing a lot of work." And he said, "I wouldn't exactly say I've been missing it, Bob's."
I haven't been missing it. Yeah, a fabulous movie. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a lot of fun. It's one that I still rewatch a decent amount of time. So Glenn, talk a little bit about like, so one of the things that humans are notorious for, and I can speak about this because I am this way. And there are very specific times that I can point to, as I alluded to when I started things out. Like I waited until things were really dire before I got my pipeline full again, so to speak. So maybe talk about like kind of what a pipeline looks like, why it's important, and why you don't want it to be empty. You want it, if anything, you want it to be so full, like you talked about, like you like winning and you like kind of the conquest element of like, oh yeah, we're getting things done, we're chewing through stuff. Talk about like kind of pipeline and what a sales pipeline is, and what it means, and kind of how you manage that, and how it looks to you.
Sure. I don't care if you want to call it a funnel, a bucket, pipeline. I've heard different people call it different things over the years. All it means is you have to keep people that are interested. You have to keep getting people that you have contacts with in there, because a certain percent of them will fall out the other side, and a certain percent of them will filter down through and become clients. So if you're not keeping track, what you call it, a CRM, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I am a bean counter by education. I still use spreadsheets. So I still have things that I'm filtering people through along the way that I've contacted, that have been shown interest in things like that. So that if you don't have some way of organization, some way of structure, I promise you, without a doubt, things are going to fall through the cracks. I've literally had times where I contacted somebody that I had forgotten about for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we want to buy from you. We just thought you'd forgotten about us or moved on, because I didn't have that structure in place back then 20 years ago when I was new into marketing and advertising. So again, whatever you're doing, it just has to be a system that's going to help nurture, if you will, relationships, to know when to contact people, to know when to follow back up and what to do, so that you can constantly move them down the road to become a client. And you have to look at where your weaknesses are. I realized that after doing this for years, my biggest weakness is marketing, probably because I hate marketers. So I hired my daughter to be head of marketing. So now when we don't have enough things up there from her aspect, like yesterday, I got interested. What the heck are you doing? What's going on? And I just saw at 4 o'clock today, I saw a bunch of emails go out. Now they probably shouldn't have gone out at 4 o'clock, but there are new people that did not know us, about 1,000 of them. They received emails today about how we can help them. Maybe they'll look at them over the weekend, and then we'll be able to know, as Big Brother, who opened the emails, how many times they opened the emails. Do I need to contact somebody because they opened it 10 times over the weekend? It's just having systems in place so you can see who's not going to work with you, get them out of the way, who may be interested in working with you, how can you start to cultivate that interest, and the people that are very interested, how can you get in front of them and push them across the line while you nourish the relationships or nurture the relationships of those that may take a little bit longer. So it's just understanding kind of like the buying psychology, the sales process, and knowing where they're going to fall into, and what do you have to do to have some people that are now, some people that are going to be next month, 2 months, 90 days, 120 days or whatnot, and keep contacting these people until you realize, are they going to go out the door? Are they still on the prospect list, or are they on the customer side?
Yeah, that's really good. And I have been not notorious. Nobody really necessarily knew this, but like in my own estimation, I suppose, of how I ran a lot of things, tons and tons fell through the cracks. Tons of business and potential relationships. I say potential relationships. That's like the thing I tended to focus on was relationships, right? I've got people who I talked to 5 years ago who, out of the blue, which I felt out of the blue, said, "Hey, I caught one of your videos. I've got this project. Could you help me with it?" Right. So it's really difficult to overestimate how important these elements are, right? So if you're not paying attention to generating new relationships, which a relationship is, we like to feel like it's like something between two people, but like in reality, my relationship with my wife is in my own head, right? She occupies a lot of space in my head in a great way. Different things that happen trigger thoughts of hers, about her, and memories, and thinking about, oh, let's do something fun and special together, right? So the relationship isn't so much. It's not that it's not really between two people, but what it really is about is occupying some space in people's heads, right? And so as a marketer, I kind of jokingly said it's a 4-letter word. Is it, the S word or the F word, or is it love? Right? Are you really sending good stuff out there that helps occupy space in someone's mind, so that when they do get to the place where they are ready to buy, you're somebody they think about. They reach out to you and get things going, right? And yeah, go for it, Glenn.
Well, I have 2 stories I'm going to share on that, because anytime you let people get in your ears, you're going to have a problem. First story was probably back in 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there. there was an auto dealer in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the Huskers play, that was in my area. And I was able to meet the general manager and went over and talked to him and had a meeting with him. And I probably had meetings, impromptu conversations with the guy 12, 15 times over about a 10-week period. And a lot of the other guys that I work with, back then as I'm working, again, like I said, for a phone book, you go out to lunch with guys. Oh, they were laughing. You're wasting your time. I don't know why you're going and talking to that guy. He's never going to buy anything. Well, finally, in the 13th hour, the last week we were there working this directory, I walked in and I had a piece of information that was some data that I never had before, and he was a data guy. Always liked to BS. He liked to talk, but didn't realize until that point that he was data driven. I showed him some stuff. And he's like, come back and talk to me. So literally the last day that we're working this entire market, and back then the average new client sale was probably $1,800 for a year. I spent 6 hours the last day with him because I had ads already made up, ad things done, going back and forth with him and his general manager. And I walked out with a check for $75,000. Now, when the next day when we had meetings, everyone wasn't laughing as much. I think there was a little bit of animosity, maybe a little bit of jealousy, but I stuck with it and held true. Second story was another back around that same time was when that phone book started getting into pay-per-click. Well, I kind of migrated to the new media side a little bit quicker than a lot of the other people who had been there for years. So I became the guy that everyone wanted to go with them on a call to help them sell websites, pay-per-click advertising, all the new media products. Well, I walked in with a buddy of mine to this mortgage guy's business, had never met him before, but I was the one that knew how to talk it, and said, you know what, we got after about 20, 30 minutes into it, talked him into dipping his toe in the water for $1,000 a month. Again, this is the same time when the average new sale was $1,800. Well, we had almost that much every month from this guy. And that's when I first met him 10, 12 years ago. Well, since I've had my own company, every once in a while I'm back there, I stop in and talk to him because he and his brother have different businesses, but two very successful businesses. And I became friends with people that were friends of his. And these two guys are a little bit conservative, but good business people. And, you keep the relationship open. Every few months I make a phone call. When I'm in town, I stop in and have a cup of coffee and just visit for a little bit. And literally last month, I think I shared this one with you. All of a sudden I get a phone call from him and he's like, why didn't you answer your other phone number? I called him to message. Well, I haven't had that phone number in 7 years. But that's what he had from something he found from me. Yeah. And now we've signed contracts with him. We're getting ready to do a project. And it's not a bad project. It'll be about a $100,000 a year project. But I didn't get anything from him for the first 10 years. But we nourished, we kept talking, we kept building a relationship. And when he was in the right place with the right company, I was the guy to go to because the one thing he wanted, I was the only one he knew in the country that could deliver it. So sometimes these relationships take a long time. Sometimes they're short times. If you just have your best interests at heart and don't always try and give people something, share some advice, share some information, sometimes those projects like this never come to fruition because you haven't earned the right and earned the respect that they know once I have this, that's the only person I want to talk to.
Yeah. So this really points to, like, I'm on email lists, right? Online marketing and people that do info products, and anybody who, if they get your email address, they send you something, right? An email, right? And sometimes it's way more often than you want. But like by and large, what I've realized is the emails that I open, like over time, I pay attention to why I opened that. And it's explicitly because the person only contacts me to contribute something that's valuable. Right. And this really comes back to value. So if you're always, I say, putting value out there, it's one of the best ways to create a relationship, which then becomes about lead generation and all that kind of thing. Like your list, that's somebody in your pipeline, right? So what do you do with people on your list? You add value, right? I say add, you contribute value. You've got your own personal perspective, experiences that they don't necessarily have, specialized knowledge that they may not have. And, by continuing to do that sort of thing, by sharing value and things that you do, that that you've seen, that may be new to them, there is some luck involved, but the luck is more about the timing of it all, right? Like at any given time, Glenn, right? You get a no from a customer. Does that mean no tomorrow? Does it mean no to, a month from now? It doesn't. It means no just right now. And so no is
And,
not a bad thing. It's just, okay, I know now that this isn't right for us to move forward, but does that mean okay, I'm not going to talk to them again?
and no doesn't mean they don't know someone else that can use your service. Again, if you don't ask, you never know the answer. There have been many times someone said no, and I said, well, do you know someone else that could help? Well, yeah, go talk to Joshua down the street. Now, when I go to Joshua down the street, guess what? That's not a cold call. That's a referral. Jim told me to come over and talk to you. He said, you've used my help. Oh, you know Jim? Yeah, let's start talking a little bit. And one thing I'm going to say here for different prospecting, just because it's frustrating the hell out of me, because I'm spending a lot of time working LinkedIn because I think it's a gold mine. Stay away from these automated damn services that let you connect with somebody and then automatically sends out a message. And I'm going to tell you why. I shared this with you earlier, Fletch. This guy had tried to connect with me last week. I finally accepted his connection yesterday. And today I get this email. Glenn, great to be connected. I'm curious if you know if you have worked with an SEO company before. I specialize with local and national SEO as well as link building. I'd love to offer a free website audit. Are you available for a call next week? I just replied back, I own an SEO company.
Yeah.
Don't alienate people because you're lazy.
How often does that happen? That's
All
not the first time. All the time for me too.
And as soon as you hit me with that sales call within a day, you're gone. I'm trying to grow a community and grow my network. But if you're going to do stuff like that, get out of here. Go talk to somebody else.
Yes, you can spend a little time and at least look at who you just connected with and be like, oh, wow, you own an SEO company. Do you need a vendor? I got some link. Like that would have been something that you would have been like, well, yeah, what do you got? Right.
Mm-hmm.
You could have spent a minute and that would have been a different message that would have been well received.
Yeah.
And then you could start to build a relationship with it. And I get that all the time. Like I'm like I get these automated auto dialers like, oh, hey, your Google My Business is not verified. I'm like, which one? Well, are you such and such? And I said, yeah. Well, they don't have the information, right? It's just auto dialer. It's somebody on a list and they got your email address and your name and something about your business. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you how many Google My Businesses, but more than one. So it's a legitimate question on my part. Like, maybe I did let something fall through the cracks, but they don't even have the information, right? And so they're not really offering any value. They're just like trying to fish, and they don't even know what kind of fish are in there, or what kind of bait to use, or anything like that, right?
Well, and we'll go through a lot of these things as we talk more about different prospecting and sales techniques and things like that. But if you're going to take the time to pick this up, to call somebody, have something to friggin' say that's constructive. I've had the same guy call me 2 days in a row trying to get me to refinance my house. And he starts off by asking me, what's my interest rate? He should have that damn information in front of him because it's public record. It's stuff that they can find when you're in that industry. So every day, the last 2 days when he asked me what it is, I said, well, if you don't know the answer to that, I'm not talking to you. And it sounds like the boiler room from the friggin' movie in the background.
Yeah, all sorts of crazy noise, right?
Yeah. So some people may like that. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. So you just have to kind of make sure.
There are ways that you can, wherever you are right now, right? If you're not at the level where you own a boiler room sales floor, well, you can do things very different and you're going to stand alone completely.
100%.
Like that person who connected with you on LinkedIn said, hey, it looks like you do SEO. I found a couple of your websites. They look great. Mm-hmm. I've got an awesome portfolio of links and some really cool things that we can offer you. Here's a short sample video. If you take, 2.5 minutes to watch it, I'd love to connect and see what we can do. And if it's not right for you, I'd love it if you would share my information with somebody else, like just like what you said, right? It doesn't take any more time, but there's some forethought that goes into it that you can really start this like grassroots, like the book you taught, Guerrilla Marketing, right? Like I got the book, it's gold. Thank you for the recommendation. But like you don't already have to be at the end to know that you can win. You just have to have the right things in place to get where you're going. And so that's one of the things I think that like I've thought long and really kind of hardened and tried to do so properly as far as thinking goes. About like one of the reasons why we're drawn to people who have Lamborghinis and Rolls and beach houses and yachts and who throw up huge numbers about what they're making is because it almost indicates that they've got some systems in place that let them get to that level. It's not that they're so great necessarily. It all comes like it gets muddled up and associated in our own mind, and it feels like that. But if somebody's doing 100,000 a month and they don't have an office, they don't go to work, they're not whatever, as far as like, having to live the kind of 9 to 5 job lifestyle, it kind of indicates that they've got stuff set up in their life that is stuff they could transfer to you as far as understanding it and knowing it and being able to implement it in your own life and in your own business to help you get to the next place, right? The next box, the next level, the next step in the development of wherever you're going to go with what you're doing, right? So while we do want the money, buying a course from a person who's making 100,000 a month does not give you money. You actually pay money. You're less financially well off once you buy the course. But why do we do that? It's because someone who is doing this has, like, we kind of believe, and I don't think this is always wrong. Sometimes it's, fake or whatever, but like we believe like, well, they've got some things figured out here that I'd like to know, and I'm willing to spend some money to know what that is. And that just kind of came to mind as you were talking, and I was thinking a little bit about like, well, what is it about success that we like, that we'll pay for? And it really does come down to, like I say, it comes down to, it's not really the reason everybody necessarily buys a product, but it really should be the reason why people buy products. Oh, there's some hardcore systems in place there that I can have transferred into my own company, my own life, that's going to take me to the next level. Let me get, so I've already got this, like I kind of look at all of this as like, I've got all this potential energy, right? And it's being limited by these systems or these limiting factors in my life that are keeping it contained where they are. So if I can address those, my energy then grow, like it naturally gets to a much bigger place. And then there might be, oh, okay, the next thing that's really limiting me is that when I do a video, I do a walk around, I get 800 views. Well, what if that was 80,000 views? Oh, well, okay. Okay, what systems would I need in place to be able to get that in place, to be able to accomplish that? Because then I'm still doing the exact same thing. It's just as easy. It actually feels better because I can help more people. And so you've really already got the stuff you need. I say the stuff you need to win, the energy, the oomph that you need to win. But you've got to address these factors in your business, because if you don't, you're just going to be contained. You're going to be in this. Joe Marfolio had like burn the box, like other people have said it, but he really hit the nail on the head when he was talking about it. Like, part of that is about thinking differently, right? But part of this thinking differently is like, oh, this isn't about working harder. I'm going to work 4 times harder, make twice as much money. That might be what you have to do for right now, but it's not ever going to make you 10 times more money working harder, right?
And the more you can diversify, the more systems you can put in place, the more you'll be able to offer more things to more people. The more things you offer them, the more successful you make them, the more money they're willing to pay you, the longer they're going to pay you. And so it may be that having systems, relationships, different types of things in place so you can offer not just A, but A, B, C, D, and E. Do you have software that helps people manage their stuff? Well, guess what? It's the CRM industry is huge. 50% of people that buy a CRM never use it because most time they're too complicated. So if you can find ways to help customers manage their backside, manage their funnels, different things you can do with that, then you're not just the average person, the average salesperson, and I'm going to steal this line, that just shows up and throws up. You're actually going to be a trusted advisor that consults them, helps them with different things, so that they always look to you. I mean, let's go back to that one law firm I was talking to that I worked with for 20 years. One of the young associates, I get a text message from him a couple weeks ago, and I know these guys very well. We'll go back there, we'll go out to lunch, we'll go in the conference room, we'll act like we're 12-year-olds giving each other crap for an hour, and then we'll talk business for 5 minutes, and we go on. I got this email, you know what, hey, sorry to bother you. I know this is probably out of your realm, but someone else wanted to do this stuff. I needed this thing. What can we do? And so I jumped on the phone, asked 5 questions, said, it can be done tomorrow if you give me A, B, and C. What's that going to cost me? Nothing. Because literally it would take one of my people 20, 30 minutes of their time. If you have a client you've been working with for 20 years and you can't give them a little something every once in a while, guess what? Someone else is going to give it to them. Yeah. So the more you can be that GC, let's call it, that head coach of your team, and having different, whether it be strategic relationships, strategic partnerships, people that work underneath you, people you outsource things to, however you get your model to work, well, then guess what? You're just going to keep growing these relationships. And when you are that trusted advisor, they're going to refer more and more people to you.
Yeah, I really like the sport metaphor that you use there, right? And we discussed this last time. We've talked about it a lot. I've talked about it a ton. Like when you get started with SEO or paid ads or whatever you're doing, web design, you're kind of the player, right? You're the person doing the thing. You want to get to a place where you're then the coach, right? And you're managing all the different positions. But to get there, you have to understand the different positions to be able to coach and manage the team properly. And then from that point, general manager of the team. Like, what does that also include, right? The person who's responsible for making sure the right people are even on the team that can play in the roles that they need to be. And then from that place, you get to the place where the owner, right? And then you select the GM and the coach based on what you know about the whole thing, right? It's really a kind of a natural progression if you approach it that way. I think approaching business that way for a lot of people who are doing kind of the info marketing, online marketing thing is a good way of looking at it, because when you start, you need to kind of do the thing, right? To understand it properly, to make some money, to get some foothold, to get some traffic, to build some relationships, to say, oh, well, I'm a quarterback, but this guy's a great, guard. I'd really like to have him on my team. Let's see how we can work together, right? And then you kind of start to do enough of that, and it's like, wait, I've got a team now, right? Can I get another quarterback? Okay, get another quarterback now. Now you're the coach, right? We're coming up on an hour 15 or so. I want to kind of wrap things up here pretty quick, but the kind of essence that I want to try to impart or have as part of what we are talking about on this 4-part series is that these limiting factors, it's really strange when you address them and your business then naturally just, and easily, I say easily, meaning it might be a little like rough to kind of figure out, oh yeah, I gotta get my system for lead generation down, right? If what you're doing is SEO, right, and you're constantly working on websites and getting them ranked, right, whether you're doing on-site or off-site, whatever it might be, right, it's not necessarily going to feel like the natural thing to do to say, I need more leads, I need better relationships with more people that can come to me, and I can do the product fulfillment, right, the delivery piece. But with that in place, you've got a whole different reality. And so we talked about the original series, or the original webinar that we ran yesterday. We talked about that a lot. We talked about lead generation today. We're going to be talking about sales tomorrow, and then onboarding on Sunday. There are obviously other parts of your business that could be limiting you, but what we want you to really start to look at is the fact that you're being limited by a lot of things right now, that working harder is not going to be the answer to overcoming them. Being able to have the systems in place and the different pieces of I don't want to mix metaphors too much, but these are things that let you completely change the nature of what you've got in place. And so, Glenn and I have been working on like an information product, right? Something where we're going to be able to train people more on getting their business to the next level. but it's not going to be about working harder. It's going to be about working smarter, which means addressing these limiting factors, having these systems in place in a way that you understand what they are, so that you can naturally take things to whatever then limit you get to with that. So I know, because I've talked to enough people who've learned SEO, from, partially from some of the training I provided, that there are a lot of these systems that people are not looking at as a limiting factor on their business. They're looking at it as like, I need to learn SEO better, or I need to go to more events so I meet more people, but they don't have the concept of what they're actually doing. There's no onboarding piece in place, right? There's just a lot of, so any of these things can and will be limiting you if you have not had, if they are not addressed properly in your business right now, right? These are the reasons you're at the level you're at. So that's kind of the essence of what we wanted to cover on this series, right?
Well, and again, it goes back to kind of knowing and having a realistic expectation and a plan in place to succeed. You were mentioning, if you want to be the person who's bringing in money from SEO, well, are you putting yourself in the same position that sometimes we put clients in, that are frustrated that I have to work for 2, 3, 6, 8, 10 months before I see fruition of my efforts? Well, if you don't want to do that, your clients probably don't want to do that. So you might want to have some other ways to bring in some leads for yourself. And guess what? When you get doing that, now you can charge your customers for doing the same thing for them. So you can have multiple streams of revenue.
Yeah, that's kind of it's been an interesting, you hit the nail on the head with one thing that I've thought about at times. With SEO, if you're taking on a new site, right, and trying to rank it's going to be a number of months before they get some really good traction and good rankings for big terms that have some competition, right? You're not going to wait 6 months to get paid, but you're expecting them to.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you've kind of done is set up a situation where it's already lopsided and kind of weird. It doesn't mean you can't sell that. Like I have, a lot of people has. People kind of think like that's the nature of it, right? Somebody's going to have to work on this. It's kind of like farming, right? You farm, like you plant, you get your field ready in the spring, you plant your seeds. Well, working harder than like standing and, playing music to all of your little corn plants or whatever you might want to be planting. The harder you work during the time they're growing, it's not really going to help you if you're just trying to apply it to that deal. So what you have to understand then is the nature of the game. Okay, well, I got to work hard here, and I'm going to have to work hard here, and now in between time, I'm going to pray for good weather, right? The more of that you can help your customers see is going to be much more helpful for you to help them realize. There's a lot of words help there, but it's kind of value, right? We're helping people. Really what you do and how it works. Like there's not a way to take a corn seed kernel, put it in the ground, and then I pay enough money that it's ready to cultivate tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. So that's the nature of what we do. So what you talked about, it's like, well, okay, if you need revenue in the next 6 months, we need to look at some different things. If you want to get more traffic, we need to look at pay-per-click. If you want to look at the list of people you already have, let's look at that and see if we can bring some new business in from that. Like there's just so many different things that you can offer. If somebody says no because it's going to take so long to get that ROI, that you can also offer. And if you don't know how to do it, again, you ask the question, say, hang on a second, let me see if I can put that together for you and see if we can do something with it so that we can get going. You can get ROI now that will help pay for the campaign that we have to take this long to do, because it takes that long for the corn to actually grow, right?
That's the difference between a consultant and a salesperson, isn't it?
I really like that distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. I think you're right. I think it's time to let people go on with their evening. And
Cool.
for everyone's around, we're going to be doing this again at 2 p.m. on Friday Pacific time, I believe, correct? Is the next one?
I believe that's correct. Yeah. And I'm also, let me grab my calendar just for anybody who's listening, make sure that's the right time.
It's 2 p.m. Pacific on Friday and 10 a.m. Pacific on Sunday.
Yeah. 3 for me. So that's good. Also for anybody on who wants to check out, I'm going to do a Fletcher's Garage webinar tomorrow. Completely different concept. Not really a different concept is really what it's about, but I'm going to be talking about something very much along these lines. Really dovetails in with what we're talking about today. But tomorrow I'm going to be talking about kind of stable base versus the game. right? And business is the game. Having a stable base is about very different things. So if you want to catch that, it'll be streaming to Facebook. But if you want to sign up, you can hit me up with a link, and I'll get you on the list to be notified of when that comes up. But we really are excited about the next one, which Glenn is going to head up and spearhead, which is about sales. I'm going to be the person who talks about all the stupid things I've done, not having a sales system in place, which has let millions of dollars slip through my hands. So you don't want to miss that.
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks so much, Glenn. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.